Yeah.
So things are heating up for Tesla. Next week, we get to hear more from Elon Musk and the Tesla executives when they host the Q4 earnings call. We're going to go through the top questions Tesla investors have. In the meantime, there are now hints that the Tesla bot might begin production soon. We've got the bulls here with us today. I've got Tesla boomer mama, the queen. I've got Jeff Lutz, Mr. Incredible, the rational bull. We were supposed to be joined by Matt Smith, the financial bull, but guess what? His wife is in labor. Literally just a few minutes ago, he said, I can't go anywhere, come join anywhere. So what do I do? Priorities, right?
What kind of commitment is that?
We are giving birth to a big,
Good luck.
I think it's is it his fifth child? I think so, right?
No.
Higher.
No.
Seventh?
6, 7, 8, something like that.
Okay.
I don't think there were already 7, but I mean, or maybe I got the 7 wrong because it was 5 and they were needed a 7-seater. But anyway, this is going to go
kids.
beyond the 7-seater.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll await his production and delivery report.
All right. So the big topic, of course.
As far as I know, it's his wife delivering. So what's his? Why can't he be here?
He's just reporting. I didn't say he's.
I'm just.
He should be able to judge. I know, of course. But this is fun. Here's Matt Smith has more babies, but so is Tesla. Things are happening. This is one of the most consequential years that we're going to go through. But first of all, let's go through the earnings questions. It's next week on Wednesday. We're going to host that live on this channel as well. But there's questions that are pretty good. I think, Jeff, one of your questions made it in there. Great job with that. We're going to talk about the Tesla bot. There's rumors, China suppliers. Everybody's wanting to know your opinion on that, Jeff. Big BYD debt is, I think we should cover the Tesla. They raised the prices on the vehicles in Canada. We don't know why. These are all incredible questions that both of you guys can address. So let's get started with the earnings call first. So these are the top questions that have appeared, and I thought that they're pretty good. First 3 are associated with FSD. Are there any discussions with the other auto companies about licensing FSD? So this is shareholders vote, and based on total number of shares that each of the voters have, that's how they know which is the first questions. Tesla's done a fantastic job. They answer usually 10 questions that the retail investors are asking. And so this is still live. This will change by next week. But first, right now, as of today, are there any discussions with other auto companies about licensing FSD? That's the first question. Why don't you think about that? What's your answer to that, Alexandra? Will they answer that?
I hope they do, because obviously we're all waiting for an announcement. I don't think they would say, yes, we're working with this and this company, but I do hope that Elon gives us an update how this is going along. Are companies engaged? Are companies ready to sign? Where are we in that pipeline? Or maybe he will say, you know what, they're all backing off because whatever. But I think it's a very fair question. It could be one of those catalysts if really he answers this in a positive way. And I don't think there's much downside to it because, at the moment, nobody really expects something to happen very soon. There's nothing of this in the stock price. So if he says, well, at the moment we can't disclose anything or whatever, I don't think that's a downside. So I think it's a very good question with a lot of potential.
Okay. And then, so Jeff and Alexandra, do you guys think, where are you guys standing today? Is there going to be licensing with FSD? And then are they going to announce it on the earnings call? What's the
I think in the future. I think in the future there will be.
It's okay.
Yeah. And my stance is, in any case, Tesla will maintain that they're very open to it. Tesla doesn't want to have the monopoly on this and wants to share it. And I think that's the way to go. But I mean, this is a dance where you need 2 people, right? You need Tesla and you need the OEM committing. And as we have discussed multiple times, the OEM is actually then committing to 3 to 5 years of building this up and making this happen. So there are some that are not in a financial situation to do that. There are some that are just too anti-Tesla or anti-FSD to do it. And then there are those that should, right? There are those that should in China. There are those that should in Europe, and then there are of course those that should in the United States. So I think it's a very legitimate question, and it can go from anywhere to nothing's happening to we're very close to a signature. The whole span is possible.
Okay, well, I am so convinced. There's no doubt in my mind that there are many automakers asking Tesla to partner, and certainly if it hasn't happened yet, it will happen, of course, by the end of this year. Like more than one, and it's Tesla who has to decide who they pick and choose. You know how they came out and said, "I only will pick somebody who can at least make 1 million cars." That's their signal to you that they've already got lots of people, maybe Rivian asked them, and they go, "Well, you guys, is it worth our effort to get you on board? Let's pick the ones that are bigger." And it's up to Tesla to decide this. That I still think that's the case. Jeff, what's your thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, it comes up on earnings calls. I don't know if he's, they're, do a partner announcement on an earnings call per se, but there could be more information revealed. But I think it's something that's coming. Remember, what you've seen in the auto industry is capitulation in this respect. And you've also seen the upstream AI providers, in this case, NVIDIA, tell you like this is the future of autonomy. And, it's one thing to be the supplier of silicon and software tools for that silicon. It's another thing to have a complete integration approach into the vehicle, and that's what Tesla has. And so if there's people think that, and this is kind of just, I think it's just the way it's explained in media. People just think that like you can go like, I'm going to go buy chips from NVIDIA, I'm going to go buy something from them, and I'm just going to put it in my car. I'm going to buy LiDAR from them. No, the big piece of this is the engineering, the systems integration. And what Tesla is clearly the leader. Everybody in the industry, everybody competing with Tesla is telling you they're the leader. And what Tesla made a decision on 8 years ago is to say, we're going to go back all the way to the silicon layer and design our own inference silicon. A lot of the work that's going to happen in physical real world AI is going to move from the pre-training training to the inference side. The inference side in the case of Tesla is in their cars. And that's designed by Tesla. That's owned by Tesla. Every detail of that is engineered from the bottom all the way to the top, and all the decisions, all the priorities are made inside Tesla. And right now, what you have going on the rest of the auto industry is you have all these different auto companies. It's not clear that they have the engineering talent as it relates to autonomy and AI. I'm sure they're hiring people and engineers to work on it. I'm sure they're hiring people with AI in their title, but Tesla's actually built this up in the core of their company, and they've made it the core of their company all the way up to the CEO level. So there's a big difference in what's out there. So remember, just there's two sides of this, and I think you correctly described it as one is Tesla has to be willing to work with partners. They have to have enough volume. They have to be significant. They have to be serious about it. And the other side of it is they have a burn rate, and they just can't keep like just throwing R&D dollars just to say we're doing it to placate investors. It is burning money on their balance sheets. And we're going to talk a little bit later about one automaker, and many of them are falling into trouble. So I think there's going to be a forcing function from many different angles. One of it's just going to be the progress of Tesla FSD. The other thing is just going to be them cutting their own burn rate down and bringing a capability in their vehicle that's going to be table stakes.
Okay, what happens next week? So next Wednesday, there's several scenarios. One scenario is Elon says, we're still in discussions with 2 major automakers. If he does that, how's the investors going to react to that? Still in discussions. No
I think still in discussions doesn't make any difference, right? That's just an unchanged scenario. If he says something, like we're getting close to it, or we have a firm commitment, we're soon going to announce that, or something like that, that's going to be the positive. If he says we're still in discussions, that's the neutral. And I don't even think there is a downside, because if he says, well, at the moment, there is nothing firm, well, we knew that as of today, that there's nothing firm. So I don't see a downside to it. I said earlier, I see a potential upside, very, very low probability, but the potential upside.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
I think I would. Yeah, and I would just I don't think I have much more to say other than the conversation should be focused on the call about what are the highest order bits for the company, and that's autonomy, humanoids, and just enabling AI on their products, as well as expanding their hardware portfolio so there's more volume of that on the inference side. I think those are the three highest priority things. When people start bringing up $7,500 in one region off a car, or start bringing up this or that, I mean, that to me is inter-day, inter-week trading noise.
Okay. Let's look at the next question that rose up to the top. Is unsupervised FSD still planned to be released in Texas and California this year? What hurdles still exist to make this happen? I don't even know. I mean, this is a great question. Obviously, it's the most important question, I would say, for 2025 for Tesla. But I think that they would probably address this in their preamble.
Yeah, it's a good thing to check in. Like,
yeah. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry, I didn't.
I was just going to say, you told us where you were 90 days ago. You've given us updates since then, via just conversations, and just it's okay. It's January, whatever, 20, whatever. Like, where are you still tracking? That's a great question.
Yeah. And I mean, don't forget, Elon time is Elon time, right? So second half of 25 is still a wide range, but it could be that it's getting more or clearer that maybe Texas it works and California not, or the inverse, or whatever. So they can be more precise, or they could say, well, second half 25, maybe first half 26. There could be, and that's a little bit of downside on that question, that it becomes a longer time span and less precise.
Yeah,
because I look forward to these questions and thinking, what's the upside? What's the dream scenario? And what's the downside? First one I don't see as downside. This one I see a little downside if they admit that that was a little bit too.
It could be a big downside. Yeah, this is it, right? This is like a lot of the stock, a lot of the hype, and the interest. Tesla's hitting robotaxi. I want to hear, other than Elon, if we can hear Ashok, if we can hear Drew or the others come up and talk about what they're. No, I'm sorry, not Drew. Yeah, you're right. The others talk about that would be another signal. And for them to reiterate that they believe in their terminology, right? Safer than a human, as safe as any human within 3 months. And where they think they're going. Is there anything we've seen so far from the beginning of this year to now that shows that this particular milestone possibly could be delayed? Like, have you guys hoped that we would have heard more about regulation approval?
I think honestly, no. I mean, I think Alexandra said it correctly. When you're shipping something that has never been done before, as investors, as whomever, media is going to interpret it one way of like, you said this and you did, that's fine, that's okay, and accountability is great. I would mentally put a 3 to 6 month window at least around some of these things, because these things are very difficult. And I said the same thing, by the way, as soon as it was announced last year. And it's okay. It depends on what your investment horizon is. If you're playing options down to a certain date or whatever, I mean, whatever. But if you're just a long-term, you should just mentally understand when companies take on things that have never been done before in the world ever, that there's, they will tell you where they're at. They'll tell you how they're tracking. There could be things that get in the way of it. And they always say pending regulatory approval. But I would just mentally put in your mind that it could be a 3 to 6 month window around any of these things. And I'm totally okay with that, because this is how these things work. If you want certainty, if you want, like, give me a date and give me the date you'll always hit, then you're going to get a non-aggressive commitment. Yeah, we'll do that by 2027, or we'll do that by whatever. But Elon tries to balance being aggressive, and he's talked about his philosophy about how he gives dates and how he balances being aggressive and also being, trying to be accurate at the same time. And you can be critical, and that's totally fine. But again, when this bucket of things have never been done before, you have to figure out, is there some appreciable guard band you should put around it, and just have that in your mind. At the same time, if Tesla was doing things that were easy, that have been done before, that have been cookie cutter, it wouldn't have the forward valuation that it has on it right now. And then he could give you dates with certainty, no problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's an important question. As Jay said, yes, it's an important question. It is. And I actually like the second question, right? What hurdles still exist to make this happen? So even if they did address the first question, they might not have had answer the second question. Yep. What hurdles? Regulatory?
Yeah, that's very good follow-up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, this is the most important question. I think we all agree for this particular year because it's we seem to think that's in hand. This one's weird. I mean, it's a small question, I think. Can you please tie purchased FSD to our owner's account versus locked in a car? This will help us enjoy it on our drive and reward us for hanging on so long. I don't know how this made it up to number 3.
I don't understand. I mean, I understand that we want that. Like we also want Christmas and Easter at the same time, right? But this is one of those things. Tesla has made that decision, and especially now, so close to generalized FSD. Why would they do that? Why would you as a stockholder want that? That you want that to your personal car? Of course you want that. And they've given us now multiple quarters where they allowed it to happen. So people had the chance to upgrade, get AI4 if that's what they want, whatever. But as a stockholder, do you really want that? Do you want the one-time purchase of it being transported to eternity to your cars? No, you don't want that. I mean, this is not, we're not in a giveaway society. We're in a capitalistic society, and we shouldn't want that.
Yeah, that question it doesn't belong. It's just a weird question. It's so tiny. It's not a big deal. Okay, so this one is a very big question that our very own Jeff Lutz was the one who asked this question.
That's supposed to be identifying people to the questions.
Did I just...
What are you doing, Herbert?
Oh, shit. That's funny. Is Optimus now mostly designed locked for 2025 production? Good question.
Yeah, I could have even written it better, but basically is like, are you going? Like, did you hit the button? And are you telling suppliers to bring in, these designs, this bill of material, and I understand how this works. Trust me. Like there will be changes that'll happen tomorrow. There'll be changes that happen in 2 weeks, but there is a point in time where you have to lock a recipe and say, these, 2,500 part numbers. Like here's the designs. The suppliers have the database. Here's our factory or fixture designs. Let's call this version 1 of the bot and let's get it going. Production version 1 of the bot and let's get it going. Knowing that probably by the end of this build out this year, and when we get to that, reported 600 units per week, maybe, that we're gonna make changes. It's gonna be just like the vehicle side. There's gonna be changes, but you got to start with something. When you have this big, massive, complex supply chain, you do have to synchronize it and get it building something of a particular version, knowing that you are going to take areas and try to improve it.
Yeah, great question. We will go a little bit deeper.
Since it's Jeff's question, it's a great question. It's a beautiful question. You see all the flowers around it. It's the most beautiful question, Jeff.
It's the most beautiful.
It is.
Well, the reason I think it's a good question is it's not just about Tesla Bot, but it's specifically about the Tesla Bot situation right now. Like we want to know, is it design locked now? Therefore, as soon as it's design locked, then it's more, then
that's a trigger. If they say we're design locked on what we're going to build this year, that tells you. They said it on the Cybertruck, by the way, in May of 2023, and that set a trigger in my mind of like, okay, they probably have about a year's or so worth of development, and then they probably ran into issues, right? So yeah, that's a trigger. But the bot is a different timeline, and like I said, I think I explained it on your show before, Herbert. They can build before the start of the phases of development. There's many phases of development, but the one where you kick off mass production is called start of production, or SOP. What I'm saying is I believe what Tesla's going to do here is they are going to build 10 to 20,000 bots before start of production. and then they'll at some point they'll bless it, and it's some random they'll bless it as start of production. They've got the list. They know what they need to do to bless that. But I don't think what people realize, people think in the prototyping phase of these complex products that just a few dozen are built. You see them, with a ironing board or something in the background doing something with the bot. I'm telling you that I could easily see 10 to 20,000 of these built before start of production, and many thousand of them near the end, the last two phases, will be layered into the production factories in Tesla.
Yeah. They don't want to risk it, right? To build the production scale, like multiple factories, all that, until they've really nailed it down. But even 10 to 20,000, that is, they need to do that to get the data as fast as possible, to take that lead, to really determine whether or not the bot works in all these different scenarios, environments. But even 10 to 20,000, can you just imagine? I just can't imagine somebody seeing a factory filled with thousands of bots, seeing them, being tested, whether it's a test or not in factories, for them to not, the light pop in their head going, my God, maybe this company will be a big deal.
Yeah.
Can't see that happening.
We're talking more about the bot later, right?
We are. Yeah, we're going to go deeper on that. So, but just going through the questions still another question about Optimus, which is great. When will Tesla start selling Optimus, and price? What do you guys think about this question?
So again, this is for me one of those questions where we will not get an answer. So my immediate reaction is there a downside to it? There is no downside to it. Yesterday, actually, we had the confirmation from Dan Ives, who has risen his price target from $515 to $550, that he doesn't account for Optimus at all in that price target. I mean, normal, because it's a 6 to 12 months price target, right? So for him, there is no effect in the next 6 to 12 months of Optimus. So however they answer this question, if they even answer it, will have no effect other than the slight chance of it being positives. If they say in January 2027, we're selling it online and you can order it, which they will not answer, but I mean, let's just, dream for a moment, that would have a positive effect, because then there's a date. But I just think this is one of those questions that we will not get much answer, a little bit of a, blah, blah on it, and then that's that.
Okay. A sidetrack question related to this, before we come back to the earnings question, is I just did a show where I showcased Chris Camillo's clips of his interview. Chris Camillo is a well-known investor, considered to be one of the best retail investors, because he's been able to show that he takes a look at social, kind of the response by the social media, by social arbitrage, they calls it, by knowing how the consumers are reacting to something. He knows when he thinks he's going to get into a trade or not. In this example with a bot, he was talking about how at some point this will become something that will, spread into the investors, the community, right? Society will understand that bots are real, and they'll want to invest, and they'll want to invest in Tesla because they're one of the few that you can actually invest in because they're public. And he's saying that it's happening soon. It can happen at any moment at this point. And we're starting to see more and more of these videos of lots of bots coming out, walking in public now. What do you guys think about that? Like, if you had to guess, when might this happen? This year, next year,
I don't think it will happen before we see a commitment of any of these companies selling it outside of their own needs. I mean, I know some of them are testing them with other companies, but I really mean, a selling plan on, what will be the price, what's the quantities, what's the utility case, because maybe at the beginning it is limited to certain tasks. Until we have that, I don't see Wall Street picking it up. I mean, I'm not even getting into the discussions we had with Gary, because that was just, it hurts my brain. But he is symptomatic for how they think. There is no business case yet to be analyzed and then put into their spreadsheets. They can't fathom it. They can't grasp it. So I don't think it's going to be, Tesla showing even better performance videos. I mean, the best one I still find was the one when Optimus was marching up that little hill and sliding and catching himself. I just thought that was incredible. Did it have a reaction? No, it didn't. So I honestly don't think yet. It could be that it could trigger, once they understand it could be used for military use, because they know how much money is in the back there. And especially with Elon's relationship with the White House now, that could be, a real game changer in their mind. And we can see all these use cases. We can see them, but they don't. And so it would really take much more commitment and much more information from Tesla or anybody else, how they will commercialize this and who is going to buy it.
Good point. Comments?
Yeah, I think I would just say there's 3 waves in front of the company right now. There's this mini wave of expanding the hardware portfolio. Analysts love it. You can populate things in the spreadsheet, put MSRP in, put where you think costs are at, and that's a mini wave. That Tesla's going to expand their hardware portfolio in auto. The next wave is autonomy, and I think some of that is starting to roll in. We're starting to see, but just visualize these waves, and there's a wave that's starting to overlap autonomy, and that's going to be the humanoid. So I actually think it's not so much it's going to be in series, but it will be kind of a 1, 2, 3 thing. And I think 1 and 2 are starting to overlap, which is the hardware portfolio expansion and autonomy. And I don't think a lot of humanoid is in it, but I do. My answer on it is it's going to be unpredictable and it's going to be imminent. And when I say imminent, I would say in like a normal, call it 6 to 18, 24 month investing horizon, that it will have real impact. And I think Alexander is right. The demo videos kind of keep you going along the way. But I mean, there's so many questions as somebody who's, done factory design and process design and led these operations. There's so many things you'd want to know. And I will tell you, this, my confidence has grown as I've seen some of the videos and I've seen some of the capability of it. But I think the other side of this is there are metrics that are so explosive that have not been explored as it relates to the bot business case is already explosive in terms of how you think about it. And you have to make a lot of assumptions. But if I'm asking Tesla a question, one of the questions I would be is, all the roles in your factory and the materials side of the factory, the production, process engineering, process side of the factory, of course, then outbound and quality and outbound logistics. All the roles. You've got hundreds of roles in the factory. Based on Optimus's capability today, what % of those roles can be executed? And if I'm inside a Tesla and I'm leading the engineering portion of this or some portion of it, and then I've got to drive this deployment in the Tesla factories, that would probably be the thing I'd want to read out amongst many things to leadership and Elon would be okay, we're building this thing for, the first phase is going to be used in the factories. What % of the functions are we capable of actually doing? And we'll talk more about it in later on, but there's other metrics I think that are quite explosive that will show the advantages of bots replacing labor. It's not just the human person leaves and the bot enters. It's actually the time for the bot to actually understand the task and perform it at rate versus a human. And I think that area under the curve is going to be explosive. I think what we'd be able to do with a bot versus a human will be explosive. It's not even being accounted for yet.
Perfect. Thank you both. That was great answers from both of you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure the audience will
talked too long.
No, not at all. First I'm going to ask a question, one last question from the retail investors here to Alexandra, and then we're going to come right back to you because we need to hear your comments on the Tesla bot build dates. So this is the next question. Elon said publicly that long-term shareholders of Tesla will have the ability to invest in his other companies. Could you provide some color as to what that looks like? And then brokerage firms use first in, first out, so anyone who trades won't have the true length of time as investor. Alexandra?
Yes, and I think this is a very legitimate question because from the beginning, I thought this is not doable. There's nothing currently existing. And I mean, I know Elon invents stuff, so maybe there's something new coming, but you cannot do something earlier or different when you do an IPO, right? Now, with the little exception that you can do preferential shares. So, but that is a huge undertaking, right? If you really want to do preferential shares and issue preferential shares first, then you have afterwards to determine who has been a long-term Tesla holder. And the person asking that question is completely correct. You can't just base that on brokerage statements. You have to really, or on easily available information, you would have to dig down into, getting from people statements about their first Tesla investment. And it just seems like a huge gas machine. That's funny, gas machine. It really, it doesn't look like something easily feasible. And I know he made that comment. I think, if I recall it right, he wasn't affirmative. He was like, I'll try to make that happen. It's good that this question is asked, because I think it should just be cleared up that whether we're putting in place something really complicated to make this happen. And that brings me actually also to directly registered shares, because that's a subject. I've done a video this week on the German Tesla channel with David and somebody who has now from Germany registered their shares. And it's doable. Watch that video for those that are in Europe and want to do it the same way. But I'm also in light, I want to stress the word light, contact with Tesla's IR, because I'm pushing them to do some favors to directly registered shareholders. That may be an easier angle. If people register some or all of their shares, depending on whether they want to do that with Tesla, and then those shareholders could have early access to IPOs. I think that seems to me something that's easier feasible. I've not heard from them whether that is it. So my whole contact with them is limited to pushing them to think about perks they can give to Tesla shareholders for those that want to do directly registered shares with Tesla's transfer agent. If you want to hear more about that, we can do a little chapter on that in one of the next Cyber Bulls. We've done a whole video on it. Herbert, maybe you can link that under your YouTube channel. We did that last year after the vote. Just want to say again, I think we'll have a couple of very important votes this year, maybe all in one shareholder meetings, maybe 2 or 3. I just see them coming. So those that couldn't vote last year, now is the last couple of weeks where you can solve that situation. Once we're into April, May, it's going to be too late, because those shareholder meetings will be announced and then you can't vote again. So if you have the desire to go for directly registered shares, initiate this now, because that's the way you get the shares directly to Tesla and get informed about voting and get all those perks soon, hopefully. So that's that.
Wow, Alexandra, thank you very much, by the way. This is such an important thing for Tesla investors, and we do appreciate all the work you do, keeping us updated, and then helping to communicate to Tesla. We need to be owner share. So first of all, that what you just talked about is like people who own shares in Tesla. Surprisingly, you actually don't own that share. The broker does. And surprisingly, they can decide who to vote for. So in some cases, you might want to register it and own it yourself directly. So that's what we're referring to there. But other than that, Tesla needs to have ownership of XAI, other companies. So hopefully they'll answer that question.
I just want to know what a gas machine is.
Not an EV.
Gas machine.
It was funny when I said it. I was thinking, oh, that's cute.
That's cute. All right, let's get back to the Tesla bot. We got a couple other big topics here. So Jeff, this came out. It's a rumor. Okay, so just straight out, it's a rumor. But this is from social media from China. But it seems to have come with multiple sources. So it doesn't seem to be just one. So this guy said, apparently from the rumors, Tesla's given suppliers guidance now. They've reached out to the suppliers and they're giving them guidance on Optimus production, that they want enough parts for 600 units per week by the end of 2025. If that is true, 600 units per week by the end of this year, that would be 30,000 bots per year run rate. And then this guy pulled out from those social media accounts that there is a bunch of supply chain partners that's been mentioned already. And there's a whole list of them. Joint actuators, Tesla is going to be producing that in-house, but they'll also partner with Sanhua, with Topu, and maybe Zhenyu, right? potential other suppliers for that, for reducers, harmonic drive systems. You got this planetary roller screws. You got these different companies being listed. We don't know if this is true, but this is the list that they've got. And, they go through the list. And then somebody pointed out, oh, look, if you took a look at the stock for harmonic drive, it jumped. Somebody knows something. Jeff, I mean, yes, these are rumors. We don't know, but it's also kind of potentially true. You can confirm this. If you're about to build something in huge numbers, you're going to start contacting a whole bunch of suppliers, and it's harder to keep that under the lid. These things come out because they need to build factories, they need to build plants, they need to hire people. What was your take on all this?
Yeah, this was another stage of what needs to happen to have, to be producing into the thousands per month. You have to give some forward signal, but they're not telling suppliers 600 because that number will differ by supplier in terms of what tier they're in the supply chain, and ultimately what Tesla is going to yield out of building robots. They may need to start double or triple that at some point in time early on, and that'll drive the cost structure. But the point is that that's not the number that's out there. That's the number that may be a number inside of Tesla. If Tesla's giving guidance to suppliers, they're going to be giving them it's kind of wonky, but they're going to be requesting a tooling output plan from them, and they're going to set them at different numbers at different points at the time, depending on when their train starts, in the lineup and how many tiers there are below them. But yeah, it's happening. I look at the names, I recognize some of the names, but I'm going to be interested to see where this work happens and if these suppliers are setting up shop, in the U.S. and what's to me, I'm going to be more interested in is the plan around, either Nevada or Austin or both, in terms of, where these suppliers are going to be situated and producing these components. That's interesting to me. And also, there's some other notes out there about just materials involved. I do believe that. I do believe the magnesium rumor. We've done that in the mobile phone world. You do that for weight and strength. If you want to reduce your weight, but you need the strength, you go to magnesium. It's a little bit more difficult to decorate and look really nice, but in terms of structural components, you can get the strength without a bunch of the weight. So I see that happening. I do see Tesla, though, bringing in a lot of the more difficult aspects of the actuators and doing that internal to Tesla. And there's three phases of this, to just be clear and not like prolong the conversation too much. But there's the stuff that Tesla's going to do inside. There's IP concerns, there's trade secrets, and there's also just concerns of capability. And can others do this? Is this a Tesla only thing? And also just keeping the supply network tight. So that'll be one category of bot components. And then what people seem to think is like they just throw this thing over the wall and give suppliers an order. And that's not going to be the case. There may be some components that are very simple, where they're kind of treated as more of a black box, and I need this many by this date. And suppliers that are higher on the capability curve can be more treated like that. But when you have a complex part and you have either a great supplier or a medium supplier, even whatever, there's a whole team inside of Tesla that dispatches to multiple tiers within the supply base, and they literally camp out, and it's almost an extension of Tesla. And I see a lot of these actuator parts, I see a lot of these that will be built that way, where there's called a supplier realization team out of Tesla that will go out and work with the supply base to build these components. So what I'm interested in is there's names, it's fine, but where's the work going to happen? How are they going to localize? What's the time scale look like? And ultimately, as they start building, they're going to realize how many they can yield out from building. And then I'm sure they've got early estimates right now from all their work. So that's going to be the interesting thing. I think that's one of the reasons Elon and others will put a wide guard band, on this first year or two of production, because you are going to have uncertainty. These things have to be perfect. And finally, when I go back to these numbers of 5 to 10,000 this year, I am confident, unless there's a catastrophic issue found, that they will do that. And part of that is the learning process. We're not going to see many thousands of those bots or many hundreds or thousands of those bots ever. Those bots are going into a room. Some of them are going into a room and they're going to be at the top of a staircase and they're going to be thrown down a staircase, or they're going to be dropped over a balcony, or they're going to be tipped over and tipped over 1,000 times on its face and on its back. Yeah. So there's this whole kind of extended reliability, short-term reliability, long-term reliability testing that we won't even see. We may see some cute videos that Tesla makes, just like you see the crash testing videos, but there's going to be a lot of bots being produced for Tesla in testing. There's going to be a lot of bots produced for the software development effort that won't see the light of day. But I do think there will be many thousands as we get to these final stages before start of production that will be produced and can be deployed to Tesla factories. And what's great about this is something when you're doing, you always want, and when you're doing a complex product, which is, can I get many thousand of these out into the use case that they're actually going to be used when people buy them for real, factories buy them for real. And what Tesla can uniquely do is they have the factories, they have the customer site inside of their four walls. And that is an unbelievable amount of data that they can then bring back into the development effort. They'll make a whole host of changes to the design and probably the process side of building the bot. And then the bot that's built for the 50 to 100K the following year will have many changes that will be found and rectified by Tesla doing their own internal trials. And then Tesla will just keep the rolling trials occurring, and then they'll just grow it. And then they'll keep growing it internally until it takes kind of more and more of the labor aspects out in the factory.
Jeff, one of the questions people are asking is, okay, why are these China suppliers? Does that mean that where's the factory going to be built? Most people agree that it's going to be a North America factory because, you want the top executives really building this at the very first run. So maybe, yes, they're using China suppliers, but this is small parts. They can easily, deliver that, ship it. But also, could it be that they're going to be doing it in factories in China as well? Of course they will. Of course they will. I'm sure China government will say, if you want to sell anything in our country, you need to have China parts, China suppliers. It's got to be China made. And I'm sure they're going to do that too. But do you think that there's anything why did they choose these China suppliers rather than, local suppliers? US.
Well, first off, this is not a release from Tesla. These are rumors. Yeah, these are rumors coming from accounts, in China, and that's fine. And there may be some truth, there may not be some truth. But what I brought up earlier is, under no circumstance do I believe that these components will be fabricated in China and shipped here. I don't believe that. I believe the bot.
Okay.
I believe this industry is going to be highly tariffed, and this could be a whole separate show.
Gotcha.
I think first off, in end state, I think there will be bot factories all over the world. Okay, but like what's happening with AI right now, if you see some of the export regulatory that's occurring with AI right now, it's actually happening with the fabrication equipment of the chips, lithography equipment, all kinds of different equipment that's used in making silicon, that's used, the test systems that are used in testing and probing wafers, and the packaging side of it. That's where export restrictions are going on, because the U.S. is trying, hey, look, we're worried about which hands AI is falling into. Well, what do you think is going to happen with bots? I don't know. It's pure speculation at this point. But if I could just merge some of the thinking that's out there of like, hey, what's going to happen when you have all these bots? Where are all these people going to go? Where are they going to work when bots take all the labor? And one of the possible answers is you take your cost structure down so First off, you will need people to manage the fleets. You will need people to service fleets to some extent, some level, besides the self-diagnostics. There will be jobs for people for a long time, and this is going to be a gradient that occurs over time. But one of the ways to look at this is from a GDP perspective. And again, this could be an entire show. It could be 2 hours. But one of the questions that's going to be out there is if you take the cost of production so low, you actually bring in business that you could have never, manufacturing business, you could have never been competitive on in a global footprint before. And now if you restrict it to the United States in this example, you could potentially bring in so much work, so much activity that, you actually are creating more jobs. You made the pie much bigger. So this is something that will be heavily debated in the future. I don't think it should be your base case that there's going to be no export restrictions, there's going to be no import restrictions, and no tariffing on bots. If I'm designing the bot supply chain for Tesla, you must localize the supply chain around the factory. No questions asked. You're not going to be able to, you shouldn't think that you're going to be able to import anything. And if you work with a Chinese supplier, you got to tell them you're going to set up next to me, and you better dual source everything. And I also think this is why some of the parts with longer lead times and higher complexity that are not silicon, that Tesla's going to they're going to do those electromechanical parts themselves.
Yeah, I was just going to say, isn't it great?
This could be its own show.
This could be its own series. I want to do this with you on Monday or Tuesday. But isn't it amazing that we're actually having this conversation? We're actually now talking about bot manufacturing today.
Yeah.
At scale. It's like literally January of last year, the community was saying bots will not come for 5 to 10 years. It's not even possible. 1 year later, we're talking about mass scale of production already. I'm enjoying all these videos. Okay, thank you very much, Jeff.
There are millions of jobs. What people should realize today is these bots are probably capable today of moving. If you were to float above a factory and you look at the outer, if you look at the outline of a factory and how it's designed, the outbound quality inspection, the outbound warehousing, and then you look at the inbound of a factory and the materials side, you're bringing in materials, you're inventorying materials, you're unboxing materials, you're doing inspection of materials, and then you're kitting materials, you're bringing it to the line. My guess is this year, like there will be significant bot capability for these. And then what you would want to do is you want to physically move the bots in closer to the center of the factory, but over a series of months and years. But the point is that outer perimeter of the factory are millions and millions of jobs are the outer perimeter of those factories.
Ooh, okay. Thank you, Jeff. I mean, I don't know if people realize that we are getting a masterclass of expertise here. This is a guy who's built factories, run factories, shipped massive global products. Okay. Last night, we got shocking news, or drop news. Tesla said that they're increasing prices in Canada of across the board. Look at this. This is a big price increases for all their cars. The Model 3 is going up by $4,000 to $9,000. The Model Y, $4,000. All trims, $4,000 across all trims. These are the new prices now, starting, what is it here? February 1st, which is like a week from now. Lots of reasons why, this Canadian dollar, it's been very, very weak. Maybe Tesla hasn't been getting any margins. Maybe this is an expectation of tariffs that they're expecting to happen. But price increase, significant price increase. I know we've been talking about this, but isn't it funny how you're going to hear Tesla Q say, whenever they lower the price, it's like, oh my God, demand's not there. They're just having to cut prices. Now that they raise prices, are we hearing from Tesla Q going, oh shit, they must have tremendous demand. Maybe they can lower their advertising. What's going on?
I don't think we should overinterpret this. The Canadian dollar is very, very weak. So I think this is part of the reason for the adjustment. It shows a certain confidence that there is demand in Canada at these prices. So, but I don't think we should interpret this as being the beginning of price rises worldwide or whatever. They should, honestly, I think anybody who can still get a hand on a Tesla now with FSD at these prices should do that. I think that's one of the best investments you can make. But this particular situation in Canada, I don't think we should overinterpret.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There could be a number of reasons for why this could be occurring. It could be demand. It could be in Tesla anticipating import tariffs, that would elevate the cost of certain components that are used. It could be a number of different things. And it also could be portfolio, shifting around the portfolio and getting the portfolio ready for the kind of the tiering of vehicles that Tesla is going to have. So there could be a number of reasons for this. But that's why I always never understood the, breaking out like the spreadsheet. I mean, I get it, like have a model, I get it, I understand it, but like, so much of the forward valuation is on the execution of autonomy, that, these moves are, and you look at the volumes in Canada too, it's not a big number. So, but I agree, it could be a wide spectrum of reasons of why this is occurring.
Good. Okay. So let's talk. The biggest competitor, people say that to Tesla, is BYD. It's one of the bigger Chinese automakers. Last year in 2024, when you compare the sales of just pure battery electric vehicles, they were just basically right on top of each other, with Tesla slightly more, 1.79 million BEVs sold versus China at 1.73 or something like that. And but the difference is, as we all know, I think you've mentioned it so many times, BYD they don't make a lot of profit. Well, guess what? We're now finding out that actually they are bigger debt than they've been saying that they are. There was an independent firm called GMT, an accounting firm, that basically uncovered that if you follow through the supply chain that BYD does with financing, they're masking a ballooning debt. It could be up to $44 billion, which is 12 times higher than what they say on their balance sheets. And this is just a crazy amount of money. And then one of the ways you can see this, the BYD took an average of 275 days to pay suppliers in 2023. That's like, and we'll see what happens in 2024. If this even expands longer before they pay their suppliers, something's up. It's, none of us are saying that BYD is going to die or anything like that, but they're heavily being propped up by the government. There's signs here. Jeff, why don't you speak to this a little bit?
Well, I've told people on your show, Herbert, and elsewhere, that we have no idea the working capital situation of some of these companies. U.S. companies have to report out on this, and then if you do the right forensics and you're looking for the right things, you're looking at trends, you're looking at inventory in the balance sheet, inventory post balance sheet into the distribution network, and you're looking at stock and channel, and you're really trying to piece together the health of the company. So many people just get caught in fintech, CNBC, Fox News. What do they post as revenue, and what do they post as earnings per share? What do they say they were going to do? What do they do against that? What are they guiding? Like, that's it. And then much of the conversation just kind of like, that's where it ends. But then you start digging in and you try to understand some of the health of these companies, and it's really concerning. And I've often said, like, it is very opaque. You can ask as many questions till you're blue in the face, but we really don't know the working capital situation of some of these China automakers. And what's happening is nobody's saying that like China cannot produce EVs. They're the number one exporter of vehicles now, and of EVs, I believe. And so they can physically produce them. The question is think of it as a balloon. And the question is that balloon, is it like nice and healthy, filled with air? Is it strong? Or is this thing being expanded and being pulled and pulled and pulled? And if you start looking at the data, this is Bloomberg reporting, this is Reuters reporting. I've gone and done investigations myself. I'm talking to people in the region as well. And there's been others on X as well. Ray for Tesla, he does a lot of good posts on this, and others. If you look at the progression from 2021, from kind of the middle part of COVID, and then as you're leaving COVID, what you will see is a trend of many of these China automakers paying their suppliers in longer and longer time periods. And what that means is normally you make an upfront agreement that says you give me a component, and within, call it, in the US, around 60 days is the average, you're paying your suppliers from the time they give you the component. And then you create this whole thing in your supply network called the cash conversion cycle. It's called that. You can look it up. And basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the movement of money and the movement of product to align so that you don't have outstanding debt that's extended, and then you are getting paid by your customers quickly. And if you can do that, actually, there are some companies that do this so quickly that they're actually generating cash by shipping product, and their outstanding debt isn't growing. But in the case of these China automakers, it went from hundreds of days of payment terms to suppliers to high 100s to 200s, and now many of them are in the mid to upper 200s. So we are going to get a new data point for last year, because you can look at this quarterly, but you really have to look at it over a longer period of time, because they're literally, some of these cases it's 10, 11 months. But some of this is a math exercise. It's an aggregate math exercise of looking at accounts receivable and accounts payable. But also some of this is actually, you're hearing noise from individual suppliers of like, hey, we're not getting paid, but you're asking me for a 10% reduction starting in Q1. That was another article published. That's another sign of severe distress, not paying your suppliers. And then you're asking for basically the full year of typical expected COGS reductions from a supplier. It's called, you basically have this negotiated deflation that you're driving with suppliers. As they improve, they become more efficient, they share some of that with you. In the case of auto, it's usually a 1.5% to 2% deflation per quarter. And in this article that was we talked about before, BYD was asking for 10% up front in Q1. So these are all signs of stress. This is real. We don't know the working capital. We don't know how much material is sitting in dealer networks. We don't know how much material inbound is sitting. We don't know how much finished product is sitting in dealer networks. Now you have this independent economic firm that has come out and said that their debt could be much bigger. There's a whole other story behind this, which is not only is the Chinese government funding and propping up some of these suppliers, but it looks like BYD is extending finance terms to these suppliers. So you're the debtor, and you're extending financing terms, and now you're extending the payment terms that you're paying them back in, and you're in this control loop that would never allow this in other jurisdictions, other countries. This would come out in a financial disclosure, and that would be a very unhealthy OEM and supplier relationship. But this is happening, and these things blow up. These things just could blow up overnight. I'm not saying that what supplier A or B are going to blow up, or OEM are going to blow up overnight, but they do. In these situations, they do blow up, because at some point it just breaks, and then suppliers start actually I can't give you any parts anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I would never invest in BYD, and as we know, Berkshire has pulled out. But the one thing you should not forget, and that was a lesson I learned by observing Janos. Not that I like Janos, but I have to say he learned the lesson the hard way, and I rather saw him learning the lesson than doing it myself. He bet against the Chinese real estate market and lost, because the Chinese government continued to subsidize companies that should have never survived. So my bet is BYD will survive. It is one of the big horses in the big game of China conquering the car industry worldwide. They want to have Chinese cars on the streets in Europe, South America, in Africa, in Australia. They already have a lot. So the BYD will not go down. That's my prediction. But it's going to be a rough ride, a really rough ride. There is no doubt. And I appreciate everything that Jeff has explained, because the signs are really for tense monetary times for them.
Okay, thank you both. And Jeff, you are the supply chain expert. Thank you. This is exactly what we need to understand. We have a few minutes here. Alexandra, can you give us an update on the lawsuits that Tesla is dealing with?
Oh, yeah. Again, and I'm sorry if I bore you all with them, but we're shareholders. We're in this whole stupid game. So we're still having 5 lawsuits open in Delaware. These were initiated prior to us leaving Delaware on the 14th of June. Good news last week was that the computer share certificates from Tesla now clearly say that we're incorporated in Texas. So that's a done deal. That's the good thing. So to those cases, they're all under Chancellor McCormick. And the update of this week is that there is obviously high tension in Delaware, and I love it. I'm looking at this. I can tell you better than any fiction on Netflix. So the last chapter, and there are lots of posts on it, I've reposted from Professor Anderson, is that one of the vice chancellors, so you have to understand in Delaware there is the chancellor, Kathleen McCormick, and then there are 7 vice chancellors. And one of them is in the same league of Chancellor McCormick's. And those 2, the vice chancellor and her, have now had 3 verdicts from them necessitating new laws in Delaware, meaning 3 times they have given a verdict on a case. And you have to know she's only in place now for 2 years. So the bulk of her judgments are to the usual cases take 2, 3, 4 years. So her and her vice chancellor had 3 cases where the House of Representatives of Delaware had to issue new laws so that companies could continue to operate and didn't have to respect their verdicts. I mean, completely crazy stuff. So that's the first part. The second part is that there are now law professors and vice chancellors and whatever. Some are publishing articles. And then one of the vice chancellors, in support of Chancellor McCormick, did a LinkedIn post praising one of those law professors who supports Chancellor McCormick. And then others came out, and including Kathleen McCormick, on a Sunday commenting on LinkedIn. I mean, I've never seen that, right? I've never seen a judge starting in this little pity game of social media comments on articles among themselves. So the whole thing got deleted, but thank heavens there were people doing screenshots, and they're coming out more and more, and we've published them. So if you're into this stuff, read it. It reads like a novel. It's crazy stuff, but it shows how high the tensions are. And there are now really 2 fractions. There are the pro McCormick fraction, and there is the anti. And there are lots of lawyers and people who don't want to speak up. They're really afraid of her. There are lots of people reaching out to me. I mean, who am I in this story? I'm having sometimes a good time, and sometimes I just don't understand at all what's happening, because I'm not a lawyer, and there's only so much I can do for all this. But it is very good. It is very good that we have X, and it's very good that we have retail shareholders who are interested by this. Give this views, give this shares, because that puts additional pressure against her and helping us, because I can't do this by myself. I really need you to relay and keep the tension up. But I like what's happening, because the pressure is clearly on her, and she is clearly nervous at the moment.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. This is so important for Tesla investors, and you uncover it, you help us, but as shareholders, we need to do our part, as you were saying, help spread the word, because it's a battle out there, and there's people like this that are playing the game and trying to play chess against us, and hopefully we can somehow defend ourselves, Tesla investors.
Yeah,
thank you for doing that.
I appreciate the updates. Yeah. I get them all from you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And sorry about my internet. We have fires in the regions again, so it's really bad. I'm really sorry about that.
Maybe we can answer a couple quick questions here, guys. Do you guys think that as soon as robotaxis release in Texas and California in the second half of 2025, that they'll add Cybercab to the fleet, or will they only use the Tesla cars, given that they're testing Cybercab in Giga, Texas? I think the general understanding right now, it's going to be all Model Ys for these robotaxi tests, but it's true. Like maybe they could add a couple or some Cybercabs already. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm sure part of the again, like we talked about with Optimus, there'll be Cybercabs built in higher volumes in the prototyping phase that are near production worthy, and they can be used as vehicles in a test fleet. Absolutely.
The only thing would be like, you and all 3 of us actually rode in Cybercabs in Warner Brothers. The only thing would be regulation, right? Could they actually have a Cybercab without steering wheels already in that stage if they got approval for it?
Oh, add to the fleet. I mean, I think you'll have to have approvals, obviously, but they're in terms of testing, I think there are different approval levels for testing. So I do think you'll see them testing in smaller quantities. But yeah, in terms of adding to the fleet, I mean, formally, you need approval.
No. Yeah. Next question here is, what do you think factory workers will do to make money to pay bills when they get replaced by a robot? That's obviously a very big question, a very important question. We've addressed that several videos with CERN Basher, but I think that it's going to be lumpy, right? There's going to be a lot of workers fired and lost jobs, and many people will lose money. But we're on a way to, I still think, an optimistic utopia where all the prices of many products will fall, and then it will be much easier for people to gain. And I agree with Elon that over time you're going to have universal, not only universal basic income, but universal high income, because what can happen is the company itself could be taxed and the government could be taxed, where they would receive, like the bot maker would pay taxes to these guys so that they can give money to the employees that they've that they disrupted and laid off, and as well as give money to the consumer, the people of a city particularly. I think that's, and then when we did the analysis, CERN did, you can have bot makers be taxed a significant amount of money, and it's lucrative to the government, it's lucrative to the company. They have enough to be able to cover and give universal high income to the people that they get displaced. But it's going to be lumpy. I'm very afraid that there will be, there could be revolts for sure. I don't know. What's your answers, guys?
I think it could happen. It could go a number of different ways. I think the regulatory and tax framework is it may, bore you and have your eyes roll up, into your head. But I mean, there could also be a situation. I think Tesla's intention is for this to go global. That's the conversation. If you look at the number of bots that Elon's talking about, the intention is to go global. But you could have you just be ready for a regulatory framework that does not allow it to go global. And then what does that mean? Does that mean that the US now can produce goods and services at a price point that no one else in the world could actually produce them in? And therefore, does what happened over the last 2 decades of the hollowing out of our middle class and lower middle class in those factory production jobs that were exported to global manufacturing, do they come back? And do they come back in droves? And yes, there will be humanoids performing a lot of the tasks, but you will need a human workforce as well in many other aspects around it. So that's the question. It could play out in a number of different ways. I think this could be, again, its own show and in a debate back and forth. But either way, I think there are options. But it will be a gradient, and it will be lumpy. It'll be scary at times. But ultimately, if we don't do this, someone else is going to do it, and then the problems will be far worse, I think. Mm-hmm. Leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think we covered a lot of big questions for 2025. You guys are the 2 biggest powerhouses in the retail community. Super appreciate your knowledge and then sharing it with everybody. This was a good show, guys. Big questions answered. Jeff, Jesus. Excuse me, but thank you for sharing your background there.
Thank you both. Yeah.
As Tesla Bot becomes actual large scale, we're going to be relying on you to answer things very clearly. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.